Mandi Pryor, and welcome to Spotlight on Pittsburgh. Spotlight on Pittsburgh is a program about Pittsburgh's most fascinating people and what they do to make our city an amazing place to live and work. Today on Spotlight, we will be joined by two business leaders in our region. David McGlennen, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur and culture coach who has run alongside some of the region's fastest-paced startups and has handled multi-million-dollar budgets. Joining David is Jeff Hancher. Jeff has journeyed from blue collar to Fortune 500 and will be sharing his success story when we return to Spotlight on Pittsburgh. All right, we are back on Spotlight on Pittsburgh with David and Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, so good to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get right into it.
Let's.
Jeff, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a product of the southwestern Pennsylvania area. Grew up in rural Washington County and grew up in pretty rough conditions. I had two very sick parents. My mom suffered from a disease called lupus, and my dad suffered from chronic osteoarthritis and then developed cancer at a young age. So grew up in poverty, and my brother and I, our best hope was to make a run at it in a local steel mill or a coal mine. And I got into a lot of trouble as a unguided teenager, and that led me to going to the military. I'd like to tell you it was because of patriotism, but I was not running to something, I was running from something.
Sure.
And upon departure of the military, I was just looking for a job to get me between that transition to college. And I started as a truck driver at a company called Cintas Corporation in 1996. Well, everything got put on hold. I ended up staying there 24 years and rose to the ranks of executive leadership in that company. And then in 2019, I branched off and chasing my dream and my passion to help other leaders reach their fullest potential through Jeff Hancher Enterprises, and it's been an amazing run so far. I'm loving it.
Great. That was a great little, we'll get more into that in a moment.
Sure.
And David, what about you? What's your backstory?
Yeah, so I have been in the Pittsburgh region for almost 20 years now. I'm not originally from here. I actually grew up in the state of Indiana. I was a child of an entrepreneur, and so my dad and my grandfather were both into different businesses, mostly in the insurance industry, but we did have a little bit of a brief foray into the furniture business, and so I learned entrepreneurialism from really the time I was a little boy, and I learned what it took to run a business, to grow a business, and really be in business. And so moved here to the Pittsburgh area for a job in the insurance industry, was part of some startup companies, and have transitioned into my own business to help other leaders to be able to make that transition of being able to be, have a business but not be consumed by their business.
Well, and it's hard not to get consumed by your business. I mean, every day I say, people are like, how are you doing all that you're doing? And I said, well, I, find times and try not to and take breaks and as much as I can. So, some of the stuff that's going on now is people are still starting businesses. We're coming out of COVID. So what have you seen in the business industry as of now, coming out of COVID? Are you seeing things growing? Are you seeing things stagnant? Like what do you think that you're seeing out there?
I mean, there's a host of different things, and David and I are in the same space, and we support each other in the community of leaders that we serve. And I think it's been a journey, a phase of a journey. The onset of the pandemic versus where we are now is a lot different. In 2021 we saw all the people leaving their jobs. So there was a lot of employers that were fighting for labor, fighting for talent, fighting to retain employees. And we're still seeing that coming into this calendar year as well, where turnover is higher than it's ever been. Trying to attract labor to your organization is harder than it's ever been. And combine that with inflation reaching all-time highs, it's causing a lot of pressure on executive leaders and entrepreneurs. So if I were to tell you where's the opportunities, there's plenty of them, but I would say those are three that I help my clients with the most, things that I speak on the most as well. Those are three things that almost every leader is fighting through right now.
And so how are people retaining, how are people attracting to their companies? Where are you seeing the growth? What are you seeing work?
I think it's really, employment branding is huge. And our team helps a lot of companies with employment branding. Where I think the watch out is for a lot of leaders is that they have focused so much on attracting talent that they forgot to retain it. And so retaining talent is as important or maybe even more important than attracting it. Both are critical. But we can't focus so much on just attracting talent that we lose sight of what we have. There's one thing to say, what have I lost? That is a mindset. But there's a whole nother mindset to say, what do I have left? Because the people that have stayed, typically they're going to be loyal. What can you work with what you have and what can you do? As far as this employment branding and this recruiting, I'm a big advocate of passive candidates. Going after the candidates that are already employed and already happy what they're doing. And there's a whole strategy that goes into doing that, but there is definitely a fight for it. One of the biggest mistakes we're seeing right now, though, in this labor drive is that all of these salaries are going extremely high. I think that's very cautionary for companies because you're going to live with those high salaries once inflation comes down. So I'm recommending to companies, think of things like sign-on bonuses or incentive-type pay so that you can ride the storm once inflation comes down.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, I know that I'm in the marketing industry, and they would say remarketing your, people who've worked with you before is going to bring back more than, if you're going out there trying to get a new client. It's so that makes sense with employees too. If you're focusing on who you've had or who you have now, the other employees should come because they hear it's a great work culture. They hear it's a great place to work. So that's really, word of mouth. Have your employees help you to retain more people.
For sure.
What about you? What have you seen out there?
To Jeff's point, excuse me, got a little scratch in my throat here. To Jeff's point, culture is a huge thing. And I think there's a misconception, though, around culture because it's not about ping pong tables. It's not about, time off. Although that's important, it's really about behavior. And it's really about having an environment that is high performing, but also people centered. I think what we're seeing now is a transition away from the industrial era that a lot of us grew up in.
Yeah.
And now we're in the knowledge era. And so I think we have to focus on individuals and focus on the behaviors of our individuals to be able to drive performance and also be able to attract those high performers in the business that we're leading.
And what industries do you see growing right now?
Man, I think everything right now. So I serve a host of different clients. I don't have a single client that's not in growth mode. Yeah. I'm not an industry-specific consulting firm. We don't discriminate. We're here to help everybody. Sure. And so we have everything from med device to insurance to real estate and everything in between. I don't have a single client now that's not in growth mode. And I think everything is on the uptick. I think inflation has changed the game a little bit and how you approach that. But I don't have a single client right now that's not in growth mode. I don't have a single client right now that's not in the quest for talent. And so I'm seeing it across spectrums. I think it's important too, we've seen the rise of the entrepreneur through the pandemic. Solopreneur is huge right now. And so there's a fit really for everybody. So many times though, we get crippled by a lack of confidence, whether it's in a business leader or somebody that wants to branch out and run as an entrepreneur. We get crippled by, well, where is my place in this? And that self-confidence or the lack of it. And I think of a quote by Marcus Garvey where he said, if you lack confidence, you're twice defeated in the race of life. But with confidence, you have won even before you started. So we're seeing this rise, but so many times as leaders, especially startup companies, we can start focusing on the problem. High turnover, labor's at an all-time high, inflation is going through the roof, and we're talking about why we can't. When what we need to be talking about is how can we seize the opportunity? Because in my experience, probably in most of our experiences, we have found that in the face of the biggest adversity, the biggest opportunities are created. And when we can, as leaders, as entrepreneurs, look at the problem and say, I can be a solution to it, it changes the entire game. And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, is helping companies and leaders find out what that is for them. How can you serve the problem? How can you become a solution? When we can do that, then the adversity becomes our friend. And that's a great opportunity now in the rise of the entrepreneur.
Well, and I think, especially if you're an established company, you kind of have tunnel vision. You've been doing it the same, you're going through the same, it's all, so now that everything's kind of changed, they still want to do the same thing, but it's not working. And I definitely think mindset's behind it. I definitely think being open to opportunity, thinking, I hate to say outside the box, because even saying that is not outside the box. But what do you think? Like, what do you see out there in terms of people growing and the push right now?
Yeah, to Jeff's point, all of the problems that our businesses are facing can be really opportunities. I had a business owner actually just ask me the other day, how do I use culture to be able to confront inflation, labor shortages, and those things they're real problems. And I go back to looking at behaviors around culture. One of the behaviors that a lot of my clients will put into their culture statements is find a way. And when we look at that behavior of finding a way, we can ask ourselves different questions, kind of to your points.
Sure.
Not just outside the box, but beyond the box, and be able to look at what opportunities do we have? What does this make possible for us? And asking ourselves different questions like that will help us to address those issues. And I think that sometimes it just takes an outside force to be able to keep our mindset from being forced inside that box, and to be able to look outside the boundaries.
And what do you suggest for like the solopreneurs? Obviously you're running twice as fast without much help, so you're going. What do you say to them to help them succeed, help them grow, help them see like the bigger picture? Because I think they don't know.
I'm going to jump in on that.
Please.
Because I think that the biggest thing you described the solopreneur so well. This is going to be counterintuitive and maybe even controversial. Slow down. Absolutely slow down, because when we slow down, we can actually take stock of what are we running for. And a lot of times solopreneurs are running scared. They're like they have FOMO. They're afraid of missing out on something. But we've got to be advancing confidently in the direction of our dreams, not all across the field. We have to be really focused. And so I would say we've got to slow down, and we have to be focused. And so, if there are solopreneurs out there that are struggling with trying to do it all, stop. Trust me.
Well, that's probably.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I want to go. My mind is constantly generating ideas, which is great. I have a new idea for everything. And my biggest hurdle, though, is planning. Like, if I want to plan something bigger than what I'm doing, instead of just doing what I know, like plan something in the long run, that's where I struggle with. Because I'm like, I want to get it done. I want to get it out. I'm very excited about it. And then I don't want to lose that motive or I forget what word I'm trying to use, but momentum. Thank you.
I think, and a lot of leaders are facing that. Entrepreneurs, executives in corporate, whatever it might be. I take a lot of leaders through a simple process to get the mindset that David's talking about and to slow down. And it's simple but profound. And this is really it. As is, should be, barriers, payoff. When you start thinking about this journey, you can start thinking about strategy. As it is today, as I would like it to be, desired state, the barriers are the resistance that I need to correct. But when I do, the payoff, not only for me, but the people that I can serve. As is, should be, barriers, payoff. It's a great way to slow down and be productive versus just being busy.
Yes. I mean, productivity is probably, it's huge.
Huge.
You can't just waste time doing like this, and that. And you have to work, for everything, get help.
Absolutely.
Don't do everything yourself, I guess I should say.
For sure.
Absolutely,
For
yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
And so, speaking of Cintas, I'm very familiar with the company. And, how is your transition from this more standard corporate position, and now you're taking it into the entrepreneurial world, into, training and showing leadership for these different size companies?
The transition has been wild. It's all I knew for 24 years. And loved the company. I wasn't running from it. In this case, I was running to something. Little did I know in December of 2019 when I transitioned that a pandemic was, days away. But it's been very fulfilling. I've been able to use what I learned to not only grow my own personal success, but many of the teams that I led over those 24 years, and take that playbook of success and formula into the world. So many times we feel like, how could I ever help somebody? What do I have that people would want? But any time that you're holding yourself back from your dream and your gift to the world, you're not opening the gate to serve other people. And I have found that there actually is something that I have that can serve other people. And when we serve other people, it's the most fulfilling thing. Mm-hmm. So the transition was rocky, it was scary, but I can tell you now, after a little over 2 years, I can't imagine doing anything else. And you could argue, I wish I would have started sooner, but I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing. There's nothing better than serving other people and helping others lead, inspire, and win in all they're called to do.
Well, we're going to come back to that in a second. We're going to take a little break, and then I'm going to find out your perspective on it as well. Hi, and welcome back. We are talking leadership today, and we have Jeff and David here, so I can't wait to hear more about what they have to say and how they can inspire some of our business leaders and entrepreneurs in the area in being successful in 2022. So welcome back. We're going to get started. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership and what opportunities you think that they should see out there and how they can grow as a leader.
Mandi, I think that one of the biggest opportunities for any business owner, business leader, is to really create a culture within their organization. And when I say culture, as I said before, talking about behaviors, something that attracts good talent, high-performing talent. And when you focus on behavior, that is probably one of the biggest opportunities that I see working with my clients. And the thing is, too, I know there's a lot of times where business owners get caught up in mission, vision, and values. And those are all good things. Yes. But really, what it comes down to, it's how do we do our work? What are the things that we can do? And when we look at the behaviors of our people, those are the things that we can lead and we can teach and we can give feedback on. We can coach them. And those are the practical things. Mission and vision and values are these things that we hang on the wall. But when we talk about finding a way or practicing blameless problem solving, that's when we actually put the rubber on the road. And so I think that's the biggest opportunity that a lot of leaders are missing. And I think, too, that they forget that culture is a leadership function. It really is a leadership function. If they have a crappy culture, they've got to look in the mirror and look at themselves, because it's a leadership function. And so to the extent that we can create a culture that is attractive to high performers, we're going to be able to overcome some of the problems that we were talking about earlier, all of the problems that are facing business leaders today. What do you think, Jeff?
It's thinking of leadership at large, not to put every leader in a box, but, I think about going into leadership for the first time, and I had this mindset that everybody was going to do it the way I did it. And there comes the slap in the face, like, guess what? They don't. Not everybody does it the way that you did it. And, sitting through, 15 years of succession planning and figuring out what is the one or two things that I see typically that hold leaders back. By and large, the biggest is challenging leadership or performance management. And this is something that when leaders get this right, they see it as a gift. This feedback, this accountability. And sometimes leaders, when they're told, hey, you got to get better at this, what they do is they pull out the big stick and just start clubbing people.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you bleed into submission. I'm not going to be bullied anymore as a leader. I'm the new sheriff in town. I'm going to make it happen. We can't take withdrawals from people without making deposits. Deposits are the expectations that we set. We have to remember that as a leader, you have to earn the right to hold people accountable. You can't just come in with this stick. And so we have a workshop on performance management where we take leaders through this process of how to set clear expectations. Can you imagine leaving the studio and driving on your way home and getting pulled over for speeding, and there was never a speed limit sign posted and you didn't even know what speeding was? You would be beside yourself thinking like, what is this about? Why am I in trouble?
Yeah.
But so many times as leaders, that's what we do. We just start handing out speeding tickets and people didn't even know it was a crime.
They were doing something wrong.
They had no idea. And the biggest thing is that leaders really don't know how to hold people accountable. So we teach leaders, how do you set clear expectations? And then when the tough conversation has to happen, and it's not if, it's when, then we see that feedback as a gift versus, a prison sentence. The sweat's coming down. What are they going to say? How are they going to react? We can't control how people respond, but we can always control, as a leader, how we deliver. So we take them through the feedback pyramid, and we take them through the 5 questions that they can ask to help change somebody's behavior. Because feedback, when it's a gift, it's not about discipline, it's about behavior. And when we can give that to our people, it's an absolute gift in getting them to reach their fullest potential.
And I think one thing you have to take into consideration is every employee is a different personality.
Right.
Every
Yes.
employee is not going to shine at a sales meeting or in front of people. Right. Some love to be behind a desk and they do great accounting work. And so you can't even, discipline, if that's the term you want to use, you can't discipline them in the same way because they don't respond the same way.
Right.
Some are going to be very sensitive. Some are going to be like, oh, okay, whatever, I'm going to keep doing what I do. So. I mean, you do have to have a different mindset as a leader that you can't just hand out, parking tickets to everybody
Exactly.
and say, hey, everybody, you're all wrong. I'm just annoyed today. So.
Yeah, it might be you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, all right, well.
Well, I think that some leaders look at feedback not as a gift, and I think that that's the biggest mindset shift that I've seen is that we have to teach leaders that feedback is a gift first and foremost, but there's really 2 types of feedback. One is motivational. It's the, hey, this is what you've done well. And developmental is the second type. How can I do this better? So motivational, hey, look what you did. This is really great. Developmental, here's what we need to do better next time. And so when we look at it that way, it truly can be a gift. And you're really wrapping up feedback in a nice box to be able to say, look, we want the best for our people, and we want to tell you what you've done right and what you could do better. So I think that oftentimes we look at feedback as positive or negative. And I'm suggesting that leaders look at it in a different way. Look at it as motivational, look at it as developmental.
And throw motivation behind it too.
Exactly.
Just because they're doing something that you want them to do different doesn't mean it's a negative. It could be something that, an incentive almost. Well, let's correct this by giving them an incentive rather than saying you guys are all wrong and terrible to work with.
Well,
so.
and you mentioned all employees have different personalities. So do leaders.
Yeah.
I work with leaders that they're all about the pony rides and cotton candy. Let's just have a party. Everything's going to be great, right? And there's no
like the
level
show The
of
Office.
exactly.
Right.
There's no level of accountability at all. Adversely, I work with leaders that say, why would I tell them they're doing a good job? I pay them to do that. Their paycheck on Friday, that's me saying thank you for a job well done.
Yeah, there has to be some middle ground.
There's got to be some balance there. Don't get too high on your highs. Don't get too low on your lows. Right. And sometimes the risk we have as a leader, especially new leaders, is like, I have arrived. I now have the corner office, I have the title, and I'm going to call the shots around here. That's appointed authority. Appointed authority never captures magnetism. Earned authority. Earned authority captures magnetism. Look no further than a Martin Luther King. What was his title? What was his org chart like? He didn't have one, but people chased after this man because of his vision and earning the right to have followers. As leaders, we have to keep in mind that you will teach what you know, but you'll attract who you are. We all want the high performer, the motivator, the hard worker, but as leaders, we have to keep this one thing in mind, that you will attract who you are, not what you want. You will attract who you are, not what you want. So don't be afraid to hold people accountable, but earn the right to hold them accountable. I wouldn't think twice if my little son or little daughter was playing in a busy intersection to go over there and say, hey, get out of there. I'm not thinking about, are they going to be mad? Are they going to be upset? No, I'm thinking about get them out of danger. Help them get to an improved state. That's a gift as a leader. When we see it that way and we genuinely care about people's growth and performance, not only does it help them as individuals, but it lifts the whole organization. And then you can drive great KPIs and great business results. But it's people first.
You have to make relationships. And I'm not saying super personal and getting to know them on that level, but you have to have a relationship. Or you have to be so motivational that they just are like, this person's fantastic. I mean, look at TED Talks, for example. You're watching those, you're like, man, this person is just an incredible person.
Yeah.
And you're driven to them and you want to do what they're telling you to do. You're like, all right, I gotta get off TikTok. You know, I always say that, get off TikTok. That's always what I say, thanks to you. So.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Any last thoughts from you?
No, I think that when we get outside of the way we're looking at things, the way we are looking at things can change. And so there's a great quote that when we look at things differently, the things that we look at change. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that leaders can do right now. And you know, what better time than now, because we've had such a cataclysmic change in the way we're doing business. And so I think this is a perfect time to be able to look at things differently.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, David and Jeff, for coming on. And we'll have to do it again sometime soon. But thanks for sharing all of your insights. And I think that everybody out there in the business world is like, oh, all right, we have to take a different perspective today.
For sure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Mandi.
Thank you once again, David and Jeff, for sharing all of your incredible insights on this episode of Spotlight on Pittsburgh. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Spotlight on Pittsburgh, and join us again next time when we shine the spotlight on 2 new guests.